My mom, along with a couple of million other women, were exposed to DES. It was a synthetic estrogen that was given to not prevent miscarriages. And in fact, it had never been studied. And so I'm one of the 4 to 6 million boys and girls that were born to DES. And we sort of were just born. Although I'm an E patient, my experience doesn't define me. It actually gave me the skills and resources I need to engage with healthcare systems and systems in general to bring about change. But when I was about 12 or 13 years old, a mother in Boston discovered that her daughter, who had been exposed to DES, had a very rare form of cancer, and so did 8 other little girls. And then they discovered that this was not just in Boston, but it was actually a side effect of DES exposure. When it first came out, they thought it was about 1 in 100, and people were pretty scared. My mom is a lot like me, and she keeps great records. She had her prescription. They knew exactly what my exposure was. So as a 12-year-old girl, I went to a teaching hospital to have pediatric GYN exams repeatedly. Thankfully, neither myself, my sister, or my 2 cousins, who were all exposed, had cancer, but we still had lifelong problems that would need to be monitored. I didn't care. I lived my life. I majored in biomedical engineering. I went to USC. I became a volunteer firefighter paramedic. I went back to Penn. I remodeled a seminary. I like to build churches. I don't know. You'll see a theme. I remodeled a seminary into a school. I went on with my life. And I didn't get cancer, so I thought I was fine. When I was in my 20s, none of my cousins or my older sister could get pregnant. And they discovered again that DES had impaired some women's ability to bring a baby to term. It basically, you could get pregnant, but you would lose the baby in about the 2nd or 3rd trimester. They told me I, in fact, couldn't have a child. So, if you can't have a child, you go to work. I lived a couple blocks from Microsoft. I grew up down the street from Microsoft. I went there in the late 80s. The stock went through the roof. This was really kind of fun. Nobody asked if I had children. But at the same time, there was another chart that was going up at almost the same level, and it was AIDS. When I was in college, I had encouraged a couple of my returned Mormon LDS friends to come out, and 2 of them died. So I quit my job at Microsoft, and I went and worked in the AIDS community. I had a bazillion majors, and one was construction engineering management, so I started to build housing for people living with AIDS. This was not a popular thing to do. But we built the first housing for people with AIDS in the country in Seattle, and that was my project. My friends at Microsoft were still making money, so I went back. But the group assistants didn't have health insurance, and by now I was an activist. So I accidentally co-founded a union. This is excellent for your career if you work in high tech. And then I co-founded another nonprofit for women who did web development, and I remodeled another seminary into a medical school. Unfortunately, the 3rd wave hit, and the moms started to get breast cancer. My mom's an overachiever, so she did it twice and had it metastasized to her liver, unfortunately. But then I knew how to do web development, so we had a family blog. I knew how to do research. We got her to Mayo. We got her into a Class 2 trial, and last year she just produced her first play at the age of 79. I left that because now I like politics, and I kept getting fired from my IT jobs for starting unions. So I volunteered on a political campaign, and I thought I was the volunteer coordinator for the day. And I said, sure, I'll be the volunteer coordinator for the day. I've done this. And I ended up being the state volunteer coordinator for the Dean campaign. I then went back into IT, but this time in health IT, and I implemented the first EHR at Group Health, where we started with patients first. We gave patients access to their records first. Has the highest rates of adoption and use in the country, 620,000 patients. We use information as therapy. Then, for some reason, people kept asking me to serve on boards and committees. I stood up the National Health Collaborative for the Office of the National Coordinator. You can see all this stuff. It's not really about me. But what I started to do was to take the individual into systems. And I just happened to work in health IT, and so that's where I did it. I'm talking a little long. So how does this apply to real people? My nephew, Jesse, lives in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and he's a maniac with sports. He does everything. He's nationally ranked in snowboarding. But he also last year decided he wanted to play football as well. And so on the first day of practice, his mother my sister and I were in Sedona, and she got a ton of text messages, which I told her to ignore. And it turned out he broke his shoulder. So while we were in Sedona, far away, using my phone, oh, those are fast, I found an orthopedic surgeon in Vail, and we looked at the procedure online, and that was good. We looked at the procedure online and basically got him the care that he needed. So I guess the takeaway for me is that you need to stand together. Patients need to stand with providers. Providers and patients need to stand with researchers. You need to take the individual patient advocates who are working so hard at this and stand up as a community instead of each person trying to do this alone. Thank you.